Okay, this is a video about determinism. Talking about in your workflows, when you're using your work tools, when should you think about determinism versus non-determinism? When should you expect a workflow to play out exactly the same, and when do you want it to be more random and generated? So in pursuit of explaining this, I've created this little FlowDot app which sort of metaphorically or analogously explains my thought process. So on the left is a fully deterministic machine in which the ball drops, gravity drives it forward, it hits things, it plays out exactly the same every single time, even if that thing is complex. And on the right is a non-deterministic version of the same exact design, only the ball is not driven by strict rules of physics and gravity. The ball is driven by randomness, randomly it deciding where it wants to go, kind of like an LLM. So it will cover more ground, it will be a lot more chaotic, it will eventually hit the goal, but not as predictably. So let's say something changed in the field of battle on the deterministic side. Well, obviously it's going to play out differently. If I move that ball, it's going to play out differently. But the point is, it's going to play out differently the same every single time. It is totally predictable. It is totally understandable. You can look into it and understand exactly why that happened. I moved that ball. Whereas the one on the right is not predictable. This is why people say it's a black box. You can't explain why it did what it did. You can say it's to do with the harness, which I'll explain in a moment. But at the end of the day, you kind of have no control. So what do I mean by the harness? Well, let's say I needed this ball to more frequently go down here, and I needed it to not come to these edges. I needed it to, in fact, never come to these edges. So one way you could do that is through the harness. The harness is like the program that's wrapped around the generative technology that is being invoked. So Claude Code is a harness. It's a program. It's a command line interface program, and it uses Claude Opus or Haiku or Sonnet or whatever one you're using. So those are two separate things. The harness is the program. What does that program do? It invokes the model and it does things. So let me give you an example of what. If we were to try to refresh this page, and I'm going to now design this like an actual harness. So what that means is the harness of this is going to try to keep the AI bound within a given set of parameters. It's going to say, don't go to those edges, you have to stay here. Ultimately, it's going to try to guide it down to where it wants to go. And what's going to happen is you're going to have 1,000 million tests where you're going to watch the AI play out a certain way, and see what happened here is the deterministic one is now broken. So let's just try to get the deterministic one fixed. Okay, so the deterministic model eventually makes it to the bottom. As you can see, it's been made a little more complicated through this crazy harness it now has to jump around in. The non-deterministic model also made it down to the bottom. It's successfully not touching these edges, which we don't ever want it to touch, but it is still effectively trying to break out, as you can see. Let's say this left edge is it's going to send your boss nudes, and this right edge is it's going to clear your hard drive. So two things you don't want the model to do. In fact, you can't have it ever do those things. It's very important. So that's what the harness is. The harness says you're going to be a model, you're going to be random, which is what all models are. Generative technology is all random. Even if you get a typical response, technically that typical response was random, probably made possible by the harness. You can see it broke out of the harness here. It's hitting the right edge, it's removing my hard drive or whatever. So then the engineers of the harness would put another blocker right here. And so that is the point of determinism versus non-determinism as an analogy. On the one hand, you have lots of control. On the other hand, sometimes you don't want that control. Sometimes you actually need that random chaos because that's what you're trying to drive. If this were an NPC having a conversation with you, it would play out exactly the same. And so you're not going to talk to this NPC. It's going to be very boring. This is always the same conversation it has. Whereas this NPC at least is like saying different things. It doesn't always make sense. Sometimes it's very wrong, but it is completely not predictable. And so sometimes you want that non-predictability. Okay. With all that in mind, I'm going to show you two now actual work-based use case scenarios. This is a FlowDot app. As you can see, you can go to this URL and play with this little example. I'm going to show you another FlowDot app, which is this. It's the GEO Scanner. So this is a pretty handy app. This app connects to two workflows. So for all FlowDot apps, you can bring your mouse over into this corner here, and you're going to get this FlowDot little hover tool. And if you hit this drop down, we can see that this app is connected to two workflows and one document. So the GEO Scanner, the GEO Advisor. we can look at both of those. So I'm going to pop into the SEO GEO Scanner. This is the front end of the workflow. You could just run it directly. You don't have to run it through the app front end. And what's going to happen is it's going to run instantly because this scanner is totally deterministic, just like this, just like the one on the left here. This scanner is not invoking an LLM. It's just hitting the website that I provided, and it's coming back with this result. And here's the score, 83 SEO, 61 GEO. Right? So that's going to happen the same every single time I run it on this particular URL. It's always going to come back with the same exact score, 8361, because there is no randomness in this workflow. Let me show you the workflow. We'll go into the editor. We're going to come over here, and here's the workflow. You supply it with a URL. It hits a custom node. That custom node takes the URL and just appends the different outputs, the robots file, etc. Sends all these to HTTP requests as the URL, plus headers if needed. And then it's going to output all that information into this other custom node. This custom node contains all the JavaScript of the actual full scan logic, which is, again, totally deterministic. It's going to rate everything semantically based off of the actual rules of SEO and GEO. No non-deterministic advice or whatever injecting itself in at this stage. So my view is you keep your work order separate. You keep your deterministic stuff separate and potentially usually first, and then your generative technology if you want to use after that. So this is the SEO GEO Analyzer. It is a custom node, which I've shared. I'm going to come on down here to the SEO GEO Analyzer. We can see that it's all named here. It's all fine and well. We can see the inputs and outputs that it uses. We can see the script. It's a pretty heady script because it contains all those rules. Everything here is just if-then conditionals. You maybe don't understand it. If you don't, you can hit the AI helper. It's going to allow you to connect, just like all FlowDot things, to whichever model. I'm going to go ahead and use OpenAI since I have my OAuth connected. And I'm just going to say, explain this custom node. And it will explain that it is a big scanner. So the first thing it's going to do is read it. And it's telling me this is indeed breaking down exactly what it does, a bunch of different rules. So this is helpful if you're using a public workflow that has a custom node and you want to make sure you understand what's going on rather than just blindly use it. So as a recap, this explanation that OpenAI just gave me is generative, non-deterministic. There's a chance this guy's wrong. They could be wrong. This bot could be wrong, or it could be right. It is a page auditing tool, and that all makes sense. I'm not going to read all this, but the point is to trust the model you have connected. So I do trust that GPT 5.4 can read a few hundred lines of JavaScript and explain it. Right now, if I had a smaller model, maybe you don't have that trust. So everything about the random generative tech also depends on what model you have connected. If you have a very silly model, it's going to give you a very silly response. So this whole workflow is completely deterministic. It will always play out the same. The score will always play out the same. So that way when you scan over here, I'll show you what that means now. So we'll do the same thing. FlowDot.ai, we'll scan it and we'll see the current poor score. I think it was 8361. So what this app does, which is connected to these workflows, and again, we are still operating purely deterministically right now. This app just takes all that output that this showed, that I previously showed, and just dresses it up with like a nice front end and makes it easier to understand. So you don't need an AI to interpret this. If you're a web developer or someone who's been doing this for a minute, you already know what all this stuff means. You're going to see this graph and you're already going to have a plan immediately in your head. If your problem is SEO only, you can focus on that. If you only want to focus on the GEO, that's great too. This app is the front end of the workflow. So up until now, everything's purely deterministic. This advice it's giving me is solid advice. I can copy this, and this is going to copy all the issues, and I can give it to my web developer or myself or in a to-do file, and we can see the breakdown. SEO is really poor on the social stuff. GEO has like tons of issues. Here's some ready-made fixes that it wants me to attach. There's already an LLM's text, but these didn't exist. So let's say I wanted the advice now. I wanted to hook this up. I wanted some AI to digest all of this information for me and give me some actionable advice. Well, that's the other connected workflow, which is this, SEO GEO Advisor. And that is invoked if I turn this toggle on, according to this particular app. It's going to happen after the scan. There's going to be a follow-up step. I could also just run it right now. But before I do that, I'm going to show you that node real quick. We're going to head on over here. And the front-end workflow really just wants a payload, which is the JSON output of the previous run. Let's look at it in the editor real quick. This takes the JSON output of the previous run as input, a custom node. This custom node has an AI. Any custom node with an AI will feature this control: simple, capable, complex, or any potential open OAuth that you have, like OpenAI. It's going to run it. It's going to output these three outputs: the device itself, and then the usage and the model for transparency in the app. Let me show you what that means. So I'm going to go ahead and just run this again from the top. It's going to run the same URL. As we know, this is going to run exactly the same deterministic score every single time. But now what's happening is there's an advice plan being generated. It's running the second workflow. It's piping the output of the first one into the second one. I have this set to Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite, a very, very cheap model, a very, very, it's nothing like Haiku even. Credit usage, so the app takes advantage of that and shows it here. We've got Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. The prompt was 1,500 tokens. The response was 600. And here's the actual human advice, human spoken advice, where it's telling me what to do. So that is how you hook up deterministic stuff to non-deterministic stuff. And the benefit of that is that up here is always the same. Down below is going to have a bunch of differences. So I hope this has been a helpful explanation of determinism and non-determinism.